I woke up at 6 o'clock. I'm drenched in sweat, my shirt glued to my back like a soaked rag. The silence hit me before anything else. No soft hum from the air conditioning, no steady buzz from the refrigerator, nothing at all. My 8-year-old daughter, Emma, was already shifting around in her bed, kicking off her blankets and whining about how unbearably hot it was. Outside on the porch, the thermometer read 92, and it wasn't even 7 in the morning yet. All week long, the weather forecast had been screaming about a record-breaking heat wave. Warning temperatures would spike to 105. I stumbled over to the electrical panel, hoping I just tripped a breaker, but everything looked perfectly normal. My phone had full bars, so at least the cell towers were working. I called the power company's automated line, punching in my account number with growing dread. A cheerful, robotic voice informed me that there were no outages reported in my area, and my account was fully up to date. That's when my stomach dropped. If it wasn't a bill issue, and it wasn't a citywide outage, then why was my house the only one without electricity? I threw on some clothes and stepped outside into what felt like the inside of an oven. The heat slammed against me like a physical punch. Mrs. Henderson next door was watering her roses, her sprinkler system running flawlessly. Her house buzzed with the familiar hum of central air conditioning. Across the street, the Johnsons still had their porch lights on from the night before. Everyone else had power except me. I've lived in Willow Creek Estates for 3 years now, ever since the divorce. It's one of those master plan neighborhoods where every house looks like it came off the same assembly line, and the HOA rules are thicker than a dictionary. The monthly fees are steep, but I figured it was worth it for Emma to grow up in a safe area with good schools. I've always kept to myself, maintained my lawn, followed the rules, or at least I thought I had. Lately, though, I'd been getting letters from the HOA about my electricity usage. Karen Mitchell, our HOA president, had taken it upon herself to lead some kind of community effort for grid stability during peak summer months. She sent out notices encouraging voluntary energy conservation, suggesting residents keep their thermostats at 78 or higher. I ignored most of it. My electric bill was my business, and I paid it on time every single month. Karen Mitchell is the exact image that pops into your head when someone says, HOA president, mid-50s, drives a spotless white SUV plastered with bumper stickers about property values, and treats the neighborhood like it's her private monarchy. She's the type who measures your grass with a ruler and sends you a violation notice if it's a quarter-inch too long. I'd had a few run-ins with her over little things, my garbage cans visible from the street and our past pickup, Emma's chalk drawings on our driveway being too colorful. But the energy conservation crusade had escalated quickly. 2 weeks ago, she showed up at my door with a clipboard and a tight, fake smile. She pointed out that my home was drawing significantly more power than recommended, and told me I needed to be more considerate of community resources. I politely told her that I paid my bills and would manage my usage however I saw fit. Her smile froze, turned icy, and she muttered something about selfish residents who don't care about the greater good. Now, standing in my powerless house with the temperature climbing past 95, I was beginning to put everything together. Emma was flushed, cranky, and complaining that she felt dizzy. Heat exhaustion is serious, especially for kids. I needed to get her somewhere cool immediately. I scooped Emma up and headed to Mrs. Henderson's house. She's a kind elderly woman who's lived here since the development was built. She welcomed us in right away, and her air conditioning felt like a blessing straight from heaven. While Emma cooled down with a glass of ice water, I explained everything that was happening. Mrs. Henderson's expression shifted to concern as I described waking up with no power while every other home on the block had electricity. That's very strange. Dear, she said, refilling Emma's glass. Have you spoken to the HOA maintenance crew? They were working around your street yesterday evening. My blood went cold. Working on what? I'm not exactly sure, she said, frowning. But I saw their truck parked right by your electrical meter around dinner time. Karen was with them, pointing at different houses. I thanked Mrs. Henderson, stepped outside, and called the power company again, this time insisting on speaking to an actual human being. After 20 minutes on hold, A representative picked up and checked my account thoroughly. Everything was fine. No interruptions scheduled. No overdue balance. Account current. Then she said something that made my hands tremble. Sir, according to our system, your service was disconnected yesterday at 7:32 p.m. by a third-party contractor with proper authorization. The request came from your community's management company. I hung up immediately and dialed Karen Mitchell. She answered on the second ring, her voice dripping with that artificial sweetness she's perfected. Oh, hello there, she said, and I could practically picture her smirk. Having some electrical issues today? Karen, did you have my power shut off? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Well, she answered smugly, I did warn you about excessive usage during peak demand periods. The HOA has emergency authority to take necessary steps to protect community infrastructure. It's all outlined in Section 12-4 of the guidelines. I was momentarily speechless. You cut my power in the middle of a heatwave with a child in the house. Perhaps this will help you understand the importance of conservation, she replied, her tone making my skin crawl. Your usage was 30% above the community average last month. Completely unacceptable. Karen, it's going to be over 100 today. My daughter could get heat stroke. Well, maybe you should have considered that before ignoring my conservation requests. Your power will be restored once you sign an agreement to limit your usage to community standards. She hung up before I could get another word out. I stood there, staring at my phone, realizing Karen Mitchell had probably just committed several crimes. Cutting someone's utilities without proper notice. Endangering a child, abusing authority, and the list kept growing. I called 911 first. The operator took my report seriously, especially when I mentioned there was a minor in the home and temperatures were expected to reach dangerous levels. They said an officer would be dispatched within the hour. Next, I called Channel 7 News. Their consumer advocacy segment had been covering HOA horror stories all summer. Reporter Jessica Martinez immediately perked up when I explained what was happening. Mr. Thompson, are you telling me your HOA president had your electricity disconnected without notice during a heat emergency? She asked. That's exactly what I'm telling you, I said. And I have a feeling I'm not the only person she's targeted. By noon, Officer Rodriguez had arrived to take my statement. He was a young guy, probably fresh to the force, but he took careful notes and seemed genuinely worried about the safety issues involved. While Officer Rodriguez and I talked, Mrs. Henderson hurried over with some new information. Officer, she said, slightly breathless from the heat, I've been asking around the neighborhood. This isn't the first time Karen has pulled something like this. The Williams family, 3 streets over, had their water shut off last month because Karen claimed they were overwatering their lawn. And the Patels? She had their cable disconnected because she thought their satellite dish looked unsightly. Officer Rodriguez's head snapped up. Do you have contact information for these families? Within an hour, Jessica Martinez arrived with her camera crew. She interviewed me on camera, using Mrs. Henderson's cool, air-conditioned living room as the backdrop because my own house had reached dangerous temperatures. The thermometer in my kitchen read 98 and was climbing by the minute. This is a clear case of abuse of power, Jessica said during her stand-up segment. HOA boards have limited authority, and disconnecting utilities without proper notice or due process appears to violate multiple state laws. The story aired on the 5 o'clock news under the headline, HOA President Cuts Power During Heat Emergency. Within minutes, my phone was exploding with calls from neighbors I'd never met, all sharing their own stories of Karen's overreach. The Patels confirmed that Karen had pressured the cable company into cutting their service using some made-up aesthetic violation. The Williams family said they had indeed gone 3 full days without water after Karen claimed they violated drought restrictions which, as it turned out, didn't even exist in our county. By that evening, a local attorney named David Kim had reached out to me. He specialized in HOA disputes and tenant rights, and he was extremely interested in what had happened. Mr. Thompson, he said over the phone, what happened to you appears to be criminal, not just a civil violation. Disconnecting utilities without proper notice is illegal. Doing it during a declared heat emergency with a minor present could rise to child endangerment. And if she's been targeting multiple residents, we may be looking at a pattern of harassment and abuse of authority. Attorney Kim offered to represent me pro bono in exchange for the right to pursue a class action lawsuit against Karen and the HOA board. He immediately filed for an emergency injunction to restore my power and sent formal demand letters to Karen and the HOA's management company. The next morning, right at 8 a.m., there was a knock at my door. Officer Rodriguez had returned this time with company. Detective Sarah Park introduced herself and explained they had a warrant to search HOA records and interview Karen Mitchell. The district attorney had reviewed my case overnight and concluded there was probable cause for criminal charges. We take utility shutoffs very seriously, especially when children are involved, Detective Park said. This appears to be far outside any legitimate HOA authority. We walked to Karen's house together. She answered the door in her bathrobe, clearly caught off guard. The smug confidence she'd worn just the day before had completely vanished. Karen Mitchell, Detective Park said, flashing her badge. We have a warrant to search HOA maintenance records and electronic communications related to utility disconnections in this community. Karen's face drained of color. I don't understand. I was acting within my authority as HOA president. Ma'am, we'll need to see documentation of that authority, along with all records of any utility disconnections you've authorized. Detective Park replied. What they found in Karen's home office was devastating. Email chains with a maintenance company discussing problem residents who needed to be brought into line, a spreadsheet tracking neighbors, utility usage with handwritten notes like too high needs correction, and stubborn escalate measures. But the worst discovery was an email from the HOA's own legal counsel warning Karen that she had no authority to disconnect utilities and that doing so could result in criminal charges. The email was dated 2 weeks before my power had been cut. She had been explicitly told that what she was planning was illegal, and she did it anyway. Detective Park flipped through the emails with growing disbelief. Mrs. Mitchell, did you receive this email from your attorney warning you not to disconnect utilities? Karen's attorney's mask was falling apart fast. I was protecting the community's interests. These people were being selfish and wasteful. Ma'am, you're going to need to come with us, Detective Park said. The arrest happened right there on Karen's front porch, with half the neighborhood watching from windows and open doorways. Detective Park read Karen her rights while Officer Rodriguez handcuffed her. Karen's frantic protests about HOA authority and community standards went nowhere. You're under arrest for unlawful utility disconnection, child endangerment, harassment, and abuse of authority, Detective Park announced. You have the right to remain silent. Karen's expression twisted from confusion to fury to raw panic as reality finally hit her. This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. I was protecting property values. Ma'am, Officer Rodriguez said as they led her toward the patrol car. HOA presidents don't have the authority to cut people's utilities. That's illegal, no matter what title you hold. The sight of Karen Mitchell being escorted away in handcuffs sent shockwaves through Willow Creek Estates. This was the woman who had terrorized residents for years with petty violations and power trips, and now she was facing actual consequences. Neighbors trickled out of their homes, some looking relieved, others stunned. My power was restored within 2 hours of Karen's arrest. The utility company, eager to avoid any liability, sent a crew out immediately and apologized profusely. Emma and I finally got to cool down in our own home again. 3 days later, Attorney Kim called with news. The district attorney is moving forward with all charges. Karen could face up to 2 years in prison for child endangerment alone, plus additional penalties for utility interference and harassment. Fines could reach $50,000. But her legal troubles were only the beginning. The HOA board held an emergency meeting and unanimously voted to remove her as president. Her employer, a local real estate firm, fired her once the news broke. The State Real Estate Commission began reviewing her license due to the charges. Within a week, 5 other families had joined attorney Kim's class action lawsuit against her personally. The HOA's insurance provider refused to cover any of her actions, stating they were outside legitimate HOA business. Karen was staring down potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and judgments. The final blow came 2 weeks later when Karen was formally sentenced. She pled guilty to reduced charges to avoid jail time, but still received 18 months of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service, and $25,000 in fines and restitution. Standing in the courtroom, her hands shaking while the judge read her sentence, Karen looked nothing like the arrogant HOA tyrant who had cut my power. She was just a middle-aged woman who had let a little authority swell into something monstrous, and now she was facing the consequences. When the judge's gavel struck, Karen's shoulders slumped, and she whispered, $25,000? In stunned disbelief, as if she couldn't fathom how her obsession with control had cost her so much.